Across the vast, endless prairies of the American Midwest, the wind blew, carrying the scent of hay and dust. The afternoon sun cast long golden streaks across the backs of bison. In the distance, the ground shook with a rhythm, not from the storm, nor from the herd, but from the galloping of horses. As the silhouettes of men and horses came into view, anyone who had ever heard the name Comanche knew time was running out. They came as quickly as the wind and left just as quickly, leaving behind burned villages, blood-red fields, and heartbreaking cries. The Comanches had not always been lords of the prairie. They were originally a branch of the Shoshone tribe, living in the Great Basin, a region where winters were long and cold. Summers were scorching hot, and the land was largely barren. Life there taught them to hunt flexibly, track game, and make the most of scarce water. But because of these harsh conditions, they always sought new lands, where there was more food and more opportunities. Before the 16th century, the indigenous tribes did not know about horses. All movements relied on human power or sled dogs. When the Spanish brought horses, they initially only appeared in the colonial areas. But like a fire catching dry straw, the news and the first horses gradually spread to neighboring tribes. The Comanche not only learned to ride horses quickly, but also made them a part of their soul. From here, North American history turned a new page, and the Comanche became the center of those pages. Unlike many other tribes, the Comanche had their own way of catching and taming horses. They used a noose around the neck of a wild horse, exhausting it until it fell down. When the horse was unconscious, the warrior blew gently into its nose to wake it up, then cut off the tufts of hair covering its eyes. They then paired it with a gentle mare to bond with it. After a few days, the wild horse would follow the female on its own, and from there it would become accustomed to the presence of humans. Comanche children as young as 4 to 5 years old could ride horses. They rode bareback, without a saddle, to feel the horse's every movement. Women were also skilled horsemen and hunters, ready to ride after herds of bison or join in battle. A warrior who owned many horses was considered wealthy and respected. Each man usually had 2 to 3 war horses and a few used for hunting and transportation. Horses were also given as gifts in marriages, festivals, or as compensation for mistakes. Comanches could shoot bows or guns while galloping, hiding behind the horse's body to avoid arrows and bullets. They attacked like a storm, closing in quickly, delivering a fatal blow, then disappearing before the enemy could regroup. Night raids often took place under the moonlight. Hundreds of cavalrymen swept into villages, killing men, capturing women, and stealing horses. The attacks were swift, clean, and brutal, scaring survivors for life. The Comanche not only defeated their enemies, but also wanted them to be forever terrified. Many documents describe torture methods: burning prisoners alive, buried up to the neck in the sun, cutting off the eyelids so the victims would die of dehydration, dropped into red anthills, skinned alive. Enemy children were sometimes killed outright to prevent future blood feuds. From the 18th to 19th centuries, the Comanches blocked Spanish expansion for nearly 50 years. They were feared by France, the United States, and Mexico. American generals called them the most indomitable tribe. I will include specific stories about battles, famous Comanche leaders, and anecdotes to help readers feel like they are in the time period. Quanah Parker, the last chief of the Comanche, who witnessed the decline, the Battle of Adobe Walls, where the Comanches faced off against American bison hunters. The story of the warrior women, who were both mothers and warriors. Today, the Comanche appear in books, movies, and legends. They are remembered as the best horsemen, fierce warriors, and also as a testament to the brutality of tribal warfare. Imagine you are walking through a dense forest in the northeastern part of North America in the 17th century. The light is dim, filtering through the foliage, and the sound of a stream is heard somewhere. Suddenly, a short, dry, steady sound comes from ahead, the sound of a rattlesnake's tail. But before you can react, an arrow has already pierced the tree trunk right next to your face. The one who shot it is not some reptile, but a warrior of the Iroquois Confederacy, the rattlesnakes of humanity. They come silently, strike quickly, and disappear before you know you are surrounded. The Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee, meaning longhouse builders, were not a single tribe but a confederation of 6. Mohawk, watchmen of the east. Oneida, people of the standing stone. Onondaga, people of the hill. Cayuga, people near the harbor. Seneca, watchmen of the west. Later added the Tuscarora, migrants from the south. Each tribe had its own language and customs, but shared a common law system and governing council. The Great Law of Peace was the foundation for this unity. Before the Confederation, the Northeast was plagued by constant tribal warfare. Groups fought over hunting grounds, fishing resources, and control of trade with the newly arrived Europeans. The birth of the Iroquois Confederacy changed the balance of power, from being divided. They became a unified bloc capable of confronting any enemy. Longhouses and matriarchy. The Iroquois lived in longhouses, structures made of wood and bark, which could accommodate several families of the same clan. In particular, they followed a matriarchal system. Children took their mother's surname, and women had the right to choose or depose the male leader. Warrior education from childhood. From a young age, Iroquois boys were taught archery, hunting and endurance. Children's games often trained their physical strength and reflexes, preparing them for a warrior's life. Rattlesnakes, on the battlefield. The enemy called them rattlesnakes, not only because of their deadly blows, but also because of their ability to approach silently. They often traveled in small groups, hiding in the woods, then attacked suddenly when the enemy was off guard. Running the gauntlet, the rite of blood. Captured prisoners were often forced to run through a whip line, 2 rows of warriors standing opposite each other, each holding a stick or whip, beating the prisoner as he ran past. Survivors could be executed or accepted into the tribe, but the memory of the whip line would follow them for the rest of their lives. Beaver Wars, a period of territorial expansion. In the 17th century, when beaver pelts became a lucrative trade item with Europe, the Iroquois were determined to monopolize the supply. They waged the Beaver Wars, defeating the Huron, Erie, and Susquehannock, expanding their territory from Illinois to Tennessee. The Great Council system. Each tribe elected representatives to the Great Council, where decisions were made by consensus. This helped them maintain unity even during times of constant warfare. Strategic allies. During the Franco-British War, 1754 to 1763, the entire coalition sided with the British, receiving arms and goods in return and strengthening its political position. The southwestern sun pours down its scorching rays, causing the sand to tremble in the faintest of lines. In the distance, a figure moves, but a moment later it disappears as if it has melted into thin air. You strain your eyes to find it, but the only thing you hear is the wind and a short whoosh. The arrow is stuck in the ground right in front of your feet. When you look up, there are 4 or 5 figures standing a few meters away, as silent as if they had emerged from this very desert. They are Apaches, warriors whom their enemies call the Tigers of Men because of their agility, strength, and ferocity in war. Athabascan lineage. Apache is a branch of the Athabascan language group, which extends from Alaska, Canada, down to the southwestern United States. Their ancestors migrated south centuries ago, gradually settling in a land that is both rugged and harsh. The frontier of stone and sand. The Apache territory stretched from the Arkansas River in the north, down into northern Mexico, and from central Texas to Arizona. It was a land of rocky mountains, deep canyons, and vast deserts, a place where even seasoned American cavalrymen could easily get lost and exhausted. Small, close-knit community. The Apaches organized themselves into small groups called bands, each of which typically numbered a few dozen to a few hundred men. This allowed them to move flexibly and adapt to changing environments. The role of family and tradition. The family was central to Apache life. Children were taught from a young age to track animals, find water in the desert, and make simple weapons. Oral tradition was important. Stories told around the fire were not only for entertainment, but also to pass on survival tips. Masters of guerrilla. If the Comanches were known for their speed as cavalrymen, the Apaches were masters of stealth and ambush. They move silently, using the rugged terrain to hide their tracks. When they attack, they strike quickly and disappear into the shadows of the mountains or bushes, leaving their enemies bewildered and helpless. Uncanny movement skills. The Apache can travel dozens of miles in a day without leaving a clear footprint. Many American military reports say that even well-equipped cavalry cannot catch up with them. Whether on horseback or on foot. Multi-weapon assassins. They use both traditional weapons such as bows, spears, and knives, as well as guns and steel blades learned from the Spanish. The Apache's archery skills are described as firing 7 arrows before the first hits the ground, a speed almost impossible for a modern warrior. Brutality in war. The Apache don't just want to win, they want to frighten their enemies to the core. Prisoners can be burned alive, skinned, or killed on the spot. Children of opponents were sometimes murdered to avoid the risk of revenge later. In their warrior culture, coming up with a new method of torture was considered a proud achievement. In our journey to follow the trail of 3 of North America's most feared tribes, the Comanche, the Iroquois, and the Apache, we have traveled across vast prairies, dense forests, and harsh deserts. Each land has been marked by the hooves of horses, the roars of battle, and the desperate screams of the defeated. But if we look closely, we will see that they share a common thread: the will to survive and protect their identity to the end. The Comanche ruled the prairies with speed and ruthlessness. The Iroquois tightened their grip with unity and strategy. The Apaches hid in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike a fatal blow. Throughout history, these tribes have often clashed with each other or with other alliances. Blood has been shed over disputes over hunting grounds, water sources, or control of trade. But ironically, these conflicts also demonstrate how powerful the human instinct for survival can be. Despite their different languages, customs, and tactics, all 3 shared a common vision. Territory is life. To lose it is to lose everything. Honor is breath. To be humiliated is to die. Tradition is the bond to the ancestors. To abandon it is to sever the roots. The arrival of Europeans, strange diseases, and modern weapons gradually changed the balance of power. By the end of the 19th century, the Comanche, Iroquois, and Apache were all forced to retreat from their dominant roles. Treaties were broken, ancestral lands were reduced, and final battles were fought with predetermined outcomes. Many warriors had to give up their horses and bows to take government-assigned land that could not support their entire communities. Today, when people mention them, they think of more than just massacres and brutality. People also remember Comanche, the best horsemen, who made the horse part of their soul. Iroquois, masters of diplomacy and organization, with a system of laws that influenced the U.S. Constitution. Apache, excellent guerrilla fighters, who knew how to make use of every inch of land, every rock of their homeland. Looking back, we see a clear truth: strength lies not only in weapons, but in will and adaptability. These 3 tribes once shook the continent not because they were the most numerous or the richest, but because they knew who they were, what they needed, and they were willing to do anything to keep it. In the modern world, where wars can take place more on the negotiating table than on the battlefield, their lessons are still valuable. Solidarity to survive, as the Iroquois did. Adapt quickly, as the Comanche when they adopted horses. Hide and bide your time, like the Apache in the desert. The Comanche, Iroquois and Apache warriors are now history. But if you listen to the wind blowing across the prairie, the rustling of leaves in the forest or the rolling of desert sand, you may hear the sound of horses' hooves, the battle cry, or the sound of footsteps in the darkness. It is not the echo of violence, but the echo of the will to survive, the one that has carried humanity through thousands of years of history, and will continue to do so.